These times are strange, it's quite surreal. It's never been like this. Remembering the good old days when we could hug and kiss. We'd pack the gyms and restaurants and move through public settings. We'd give high fives and drink at dives, hold hands and dance at weddings. Now the days are longer, yet the darker in a way. We're pressing pause on normalcy, just going day by day. But we can still make jokes and art, garden, dance and sing. Cook, read books, try on fun looks and learn about new things. We can talk with friends of ours and have a heart to heart, just so long as we all stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. It's the newest thing to do. Stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. The distance between me and you, 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. And when I say I'll keep you very close to my heart, it's purely metaphorical. These times are quite historical, so step aside, let's live our lives 6 feet apart. These times are strange, it's quite surreal. It's never been.
I feel so alone in my apartment. All right. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Welcome to Sunday Night Stories, brought to you by 6 Feet Apart Productions. I'm your host, Julie Solar, and tonight we'll be bringing you 5 amazing stories, true stories, from some excellent Bay Area storytellers. Now, normally I do host Story Slam Oakland in Oakland, California. But since we're all locked down with this coronavirus quarantine, I am very grateful to be able to bring you a show, a storytelling show that's not shameless plug alert, Story Slam Oakland, but is Sunday Night Stories from 6 Feet Apart Productions. We also have a Facebook page that is on Facebook, 6 Feet Apart Productions. So now, let me tell you how it's going to work tonight. You're going to hear 5 storytellers telling true 5-minute stories. These are not rants. They're not laundry lists. They're not essays that are read and recited. They're not stand-up comedy routines. They are true stories. Now, most of them won't have X-rated language or other bad things in them, but we don't know the content of all the stories. So if you're watching with little kids, be warned, it's not a kid's show. It's a show for adult people. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first storyteller. Oh, wait, there is one further ado I have to do. Ah, you know, telling, looking at a show online at YouTube is very different from being in a theater. I make the same mistakes I would do in a theater setting, but it feels different for you at home. So we encourage you to create as much of a theater like experience as you can. Go get yourself a beverage. Come back. Take your shoes off. Turn the lights down. Hell, take your bra off. Pass some gas. Just get comfortable and enjoy the show. And now for your first storyteller, Corey Rosen.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here at Sunday Night Stories. I just have, before I start my stories, everybody 6 feet away from your computers. Just want, okay? You are? Promise? Okay. All right. I can take my mask off. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be back. I got to be here last week for the show, too. And I'm just delighted. So here we go. We are, by the way, watching the comments. So if you make any comments, we'll see them. I grew up a huge Star Wars nerd, right? I mean, I guess you can call me a nerd later in life, but at the time I was just like a huge Star Wars fan, right? I mean, I'm of that age. I was 4 when Star Wars came out. I had all the toys. I went to see all the movies. And it really not just inspired, but influenced my life. You know, like with my friends, we would go out and we would shoot like our own movies, basically inspired by the ideas and visions and things that Star Wars kind of brought out of us, and that was really exciting and amazing. Um, when oh, I was just checking because it looks like Julie is on camera right now, and I don't know why. Anyway, anyway, when I When I got a little bit older, I actually went to film school, again, kind of motivated and inspired by this whole idea of the kinds of things that you could do. And at the right time in the right place, I landed this amazing opportunity, and I got to actually work at the place where they created Star Wars, Industrial Light and Magic, which is part of Lucasfilm. And I got to work there over the summer and work with the people that made Star Wars, which was truly a crazy, lucky, wonderful experience. And it led to several years of actually working there and working in that environment, and it was great. So when I got older, I had kids, of course, and when I had kids, I wanted to kind of give them the same sort of parenting, or rather formative experiences that I had when I was a kid, which basically meant I wanted to school my son in the appropriate manner, which meant teaching him the ways of Star Wars. Of course, he wasn't allowed to play with any of Dad's Star Wars figures. I kept them in a lucite. I still do keep them in a lucite case where they're not allowed to be touched, so he could look at them. But then I had this book that became my at the time 2-year-old son's favorite book, and I actually have it right here. It's called the Star Wars Action Figures Archive, and basically this is a book that lists page by page of every single character from the Star Wars universe. Now my son was just barely 2 years old, so he couldn't actually read at the time, but he had a very kind of active photographic memory. So he would read like this page and be like, Lobot, and like get really excited. And then he would read Dengar and Han Solo and C-3PO. And all the characters in this universe were basically like equally weighted, even ones that you would consider like complete B characters, like Cloud Car Pilot or Bespin Security Guard, right? Like a complete side character from Empire Strikes Back who works on Cloud City. Anyway, so it was this sort of nightly ritual. We would go through the book and we would read the Star Wars characters, and he would recite them back by just looking at them, and it was wonderful. So it's Christmas time, and what does a good Jewish family do but observe Christmas and buy Christmas presents to be opened on Christmas morning? So so I go on eBay and I'm looking for, used Star Wars figures that I could basically set up for him so that Christmas morning he comes down, up technically actually, and discovers this universe of Star Wars figures. And the bag, this big Ziploc bag, arrives of used Star Wars figures, and it's amazing. It's got all these characters that I know he's going to love, because the great thing about him at this age is that he's never seen the movies. So he just really knows the characters from the book. So like there's no more importance on Dengar than there is on Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. Like to us, we kind of rank them in terms of their role in the story, but at this time in his life, they're all equal. So it's the night before Christmas, and I look in the bag and I'm kind of getting ready for what we're going to do. And I noticed that one of the characters is basically broken. It's his favorite one. It's the Bespin Security Guard, which does come actually in two different forms. There's a black guy and a white Bespin Security. There's two guys. Anyway, it didn't matter which one it was because his head was cut off. It was a headless Bespin Security Guard, but it was honestly one of his favorite completely random characters from the book. And so so that night I go up to his room and we're reading the book, and he stops on this page and he's like, Bespin Security Guard. And I mentioned to him, sometimes, Henry, Bespin Security Guards don't have heads. And he goes, okay. And he keeps reading the book and he goes, Zuckus and Forlom and Imperial TIE Pilot. He's just reading all of the characters. So it's the next morning and we get to we're actually staying at my wife's parents' house. We're in her childhood bedroom, and the ritual at her family's house is very I think unique, which is that we come out of the bedroom and come to the sort of hearth of the home, the living room, when they play this very quirky novelty Christmas song called Dominic the Donkey. It goes diggity dog, hee-haw, hee-haw. It's Dominic the donkey, diggity dong, hee-haw, hee-haw. The Italian Christmas donkey, la, la, la. And then we're marching up the stairs, la, 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 la. And Henry's eyes are huge because we've got this thing where basically instead of like making him open up all the presents, they're just out. They're just all out, including all the Star Wars figures are standing up, lined up, and he falls on the ground and he's staring at this world that is basically like jumped off of the page. And his entire face lights up and he goes, Dad, I got a Bespin security guard without a head. And he's thrilled, like completely thrilled. Not upset that he's got a broken toy, but thrilled that he's got this special thing. So I look at this incident and this event in a kind of proud way, as a Star Wars nerd, as a parent, as maybe a conservationist. I don't know what you would call it, but I'm proud of the fact that in a world where we put certain sort of value on things and we say this is valuable and this has this value and this is that value, that you take something that is effectively valueless, but you take it through the eyes of somebody who puts value on it, and even without the appropriate, like a head, it could still bring incredible and immense joy like it did to my son. So at the end of the day, I think there's a lesson in this for all of us, which is that we can appreciate things just as they are, because sometimes Bespin security guards don't have heads. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Corey, for that great story. Yes, wonderful. And now, folks at home who are watching, please, you can leave a comment for Corey in the chat on the YouTube channel, or you can just keep watching because our next storyteller is Cindy Bailey Giauque.
Hi there. Gonna get my screen ready. Thanks for coming out to your living room. So I want to tell you a story about a mountain bike, Moab, and me. About 5 years ago, my husband and I decided to get rid of all our possessions and travel around the world for 2.5 years with our 2 young kids. And as part of that, we decided to spend a summer traveling through Western US and Canada camping. And as part of that, we decided to go to Moab, Utah. And I was thrilled. I had been wanting to go to Moab, Utah for more than 15 years, ever since I saw this article in a magazine featuring these mountain bikers that would, negotiate these huge slick rocks and go over these tall sandstone arches and just in this beautiful terrain and environment. Blew my mind. What got me obsessed with mountain biking in the first place during that time was, of course, a guy. At that time, my boyfriend was this avid mountain biker who would take me on these grueling rides through the Santa Monica Mountains in LA where I lived. I loved it. I loved it so much that I let that boyfriend talk me into buying my very own Gary Fisher bike, which was kind of an amazing thing at the time because I had never, up until then, ever spent more than $1,000 on anything in my life. And I did it for a bike. Unfortunately, I was not able to ride the bike that much because soon after, on a ride with that same boyfriend, I totally blew out my knee. And I had blown it out so badly, it didn't look like it was ever going to repair. I saw multiple doctors, I had MRIs, I had exploratory surgery, I had years of physical therapy and acupuncture and chiropractic, and nothing seemed to work. So, it was devastating for me. I'd been an athlete my whole life, and all of a sudden, just like that, all my sports were taken away. So during this really long, frustrating decade, I kept my Gary Fisher bike. I would hang it on a hook in my teeny tiny Santa Monica apartment. I took it with me to Northern California when I moved there with my new boyfriend. After we got married, I stored it in the basement of our new flat in San Francisco. And I just kept the bike as I saw doctor after doctor and specialist after specialist. Friends would ask me, why are you keeping a bike that you can't even ride? And I would say, because for me, that bike was like a carrot keeping my hope alive. I felt that as long as I had that bike, it meant that someday I would be able to ride it again. Someday, miraculously, beyond all possible evidence, my knee would heal and I'd get back up on there and ride it. So that's why I kept the bike. And then about 10 years after I had injured my knee, I went to go see doctor number 8. And this doctor had a whole new approach to how I should do my physical therapy. And I thought, well, what the hell? I've got nothing else to lose. I might as well try this as I've tried everything else. And I did her program. And a year later, I was able to ride my bike. It was so exciting. However, by that time, I had gotten so busy. I had had 2 children. I had work, life, family, obligations. And I didn't really take the time or have the time to go out there and do any gnarly mountain bike rides. Instead, what I would do is just take the bike out, in the neighborhood for some just rides for exercise until until we drove that SUV into Moab, Utah, with our camping gear on the back and the kids' bikes on top of that and my bike on top of that. And I was so excited because here we were in Moab, Utah, and I would finally, after 15 years, be able to go on a mountain biking trail in Moab. Super thrilled. So the next day, I grabbed my water, grabbed my energy bars, left my family at the campsite, and went up to the mountain biking trails. I picked a pretty easy to intermediate type trail because by then, at that age, I couldn't afford to fall down off the bike. And then I got started on my ride, my glorious ride. And it was glorious. There were like boulders on both sides of me. There was gravel and sand. There were steep inclines and sharp turns. And I scraped my shoulder on one boulder. My foot popped out of the toe clip, but I didn't fall off the bike. And it was truly exhilarating. And when I was done, I felt totally complete. Sadly, that was the only time I could ride my bike in Moab, Utah, because the next day it was my husband's turn to ride the bike. And the day after that, we were headed to a whole new town. And a couple months after that, we were headed to Southeast Asia. And before going to Southeast Asia, we need to sell our car, our camping gear, and my Gary Fisher bike. However, I felt that now that I could ride it, and I mean really ride it, it would finally be okay to let it go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cindy, for that fabulous story. And now for our next storyteller, who is a very good friend of mine. And she has written a young adult fantasy novel about a stripper superhero. However, this is a true story from her, and you will hear elements of inspiration. Please welcome Gina Gold.
Hi, everybody. Hi there. So I am not sure if the unintended genius of this story is coming from me or the other character in this story, but I was a stripper back in the day in San Francisco. And I actually was not very good at it at all. One of the problems was that I refused to wear heels because I just couldn't walk in them. So I would wear tennis shoes. So that sort of got rid of some of the sexy. And then my wig, I didn't put a lot of effort into it. And so after a while, it kind of had like a Rick James, kind of a British Parliament. There was just something happening between that and the sneakers, and it wasn't working out. And one of the other dancers pointed out to me that that I looked bad and my life was going nowhere. So I took advantage of an opportunity to work at this club in Hawaii. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. They're paying me to go to Hawaii to introduce the concept of lap dancing to Hawaii because Hawaii needs that. So I go to Hawaii, and when I get there, I'm making all this money. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm there with my friend Sway. And I'm like, oh my God, we are rolling in the dough right now. But you know what? My life was still as stagnant as it was in San Francisco. There was something about, even though I was a stripper, my life was just boring when I went home. Like there was just nothing. And I thought, what can I do to just spice it up? So I said, Suede, can you put me on some sort of a point system? Like if I do something really daring and radical, you give me 1 point. If I do something off the chain, you give me 10 points. And she said, yeah, okay, whatever. So every week we'd have a new person come to the strip club. As we were just like the house girls, right? We got our little tips and we went home. But they would have a feature like uh F list or maybe like more like Z list celebrity come, and she'd like maybe be a porn star or she posed in Penthouse or something like that. And I would be so excited because I'd get to meet them, and we did things like skydiving. And really, I mean, that sounds like I had a life, but really it was kind of pitiful. But I thought, oh wow, who's coming next week? And it was Bobby Brown. No, not as in Whitney Houston or the makeup lady. I mean Bobby Brown as in, I don't know if you guys saw, but like in 1990, there was this band Warrant, and they had the song "She's My Cherry Pie," and then there was a video, and in the video there was this girl as she walked back and forth in Daisy Dukes. So that was the celebrity, Bobby Brown. I'm like, she and I were going to be so tight. But you know what? She gets there and completely snubs me. And I was so offended. I'm like, I can't even believe this. This is the only life I have. And Suede's like, but that's actually pathetic. And I'm like, okay, but I'm going to earn some points right now. So that night we're at a bar, and I look around, and I'm just like, I can just sing random things to people, just anything, just to get their attention, just to get points. And then I spot her. There she is, Bobby Brown, wearing the same shorts from the video. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not interested in her at all, but I'm going to say something radical. I'm going to ask her for a date, and then she's just going to be totally annoyed. I'm going to walk up to her. When she snubs me, that's when I'm going to get her. I'm just going to turn to her and be like, look, biatch. But when I said, hey, would you like to have a date with me, Bobby Brown? She turns around on the dance floor and she says, okay, I'll get my things. And I was like, you'll get your things? What do you mean you'll get your, oh boy. So I go back to Suede and I'm like, she said she's going to get her things. I don't want to have a date. I just said that just to have something to say. Suede says, that's your problem. I'm like, no, it's our problem because you're coming with me. So it's me, Suede, Bobby Brown at my hotel room. And now I'm thinking, what was the point of this? Because I already got the points. I don't want to be here. Suede is mad. She opens up a backgammon set. I'm like, do people even still play backgammon? And she starts doing lines of speed with Bobby Brown. I don't know why, but I know that I want out. But at the same time, I want more points. So I draw a bath, and I'm thinking it's going to be so romantic, but it really wasn't. It was just the three of us sitting in a cramped bathtub. Awkward. So we get out and play more backgammon until finally I'm like, maybe if I make a move, I could say I had an affair with Bobby Brown. But when I put my hand in her hair, my nail charms get stuck on her extensions. And I realize this evening is over. And I kick Bobby Brown out, and I give her Suede's backgammon set. Fast forward, 20 years later, I'm blogging about it because I still have no life whatsoever. That I have to talk about something that happened 20 years ago. I'm blogging along. Each day I tell a different part of the story. When Bobby Brown sends me a cease and desist and says she has never seen me before in her life. And I'm thinking, that's a lie. We were in the tub together. You have Suede's backgammon set. But actually it wasn't a lie, because the truth is that was an imposter. Someone named Shannon Rock decided that she was going to go on the road as Bobby Brown. Why would you pick the one-hit wonder video star to impersonate? Maybe that's how she got away with it. I'm not sure. So I think the unintended genius actually came from the imposter. And I guess all I want to end by saying is that I maybe I should give some of the points back, because I wasn't in the tub with Bobby Brown. I was in the tub with a Bobby Brown imposter. Thank you.
Gina! Thank you, Gina, for that hilarious story. And I know you just recently published a book about a stripper superhero for young adults, and I can't wait to read it. In fact, I've already ordered it on Amazon, And folks, if you want to find out more about any of the storytellers and about Gina's book about a stripper superhero, you can go to the 6 Feet Apart Productions Facebook page and find out all about it there. All right. Now for our 4th storyteller tonight, please welcome Rick Roberts.
My girlfriend's diary. Now, I only read it once, and I don't know where this ranks on the hierarchy of badness. I think it's something not quite as bad as cheating on her, but certainly not, something like leaving the toilet seat up, much more minor than this. But I read my girlfriend's diary, and this is how it happened. I met Renee in 1974 when she came out to San Francisco to live with her brother Dean. Now, Dean was my best friend, and I lived in the apartment above him on Castro Street. And soon Renee and I were spending a lot of time together. Soon we got intimate. And then I guess you couldn't say we were going steady though, because I was always keeping my options open. I was always looking for the greener pastures on the other side of the hill. Then we got an apartment together on 14th Street, a few blocks away. And I guess by then we were going steady. But at that point in time, I was still not sure of what I wanted in life. And I knew that Renee wanted to get married. I knew she wanted to have children. So I became very artful in steering our discussions away from anything like that. I mean, I was living in the present. We had a pretty good job for each of us, both hippie jobs, but it was good enough. We had enough pot to smoke. We had a good sound system. We had enough records to listen to. It was pretty darn good for a hippie. So I wasn't going to complain about anything. I was just going to let it ride. Everything was good. Then in 1978, Renee went back to New Jersey for her high school reunion, 10 years since she finished high school. And I stayed in San Francisco while she went back. And while she was there, I got to thinking about this stuff. And I realized, number one, that I loved Renee very much. Number two, I did want to have children. So I wanted to have children with Renee. Now, being the romantic that I am and being somewhat artistic, I painted her a picture because I was going to propose to her when she came back. I painted her a picture of an elf walking out of the woods holding a big gold ring. And I bought that gold ring. I bought a wedding ring for her. I thought we would just skip the engagement phase, being hippies. And I was so excited when she came back. I was sure that she would say yes. So I gave her the picture, I gave her the ring, and I proposed marriage. Silence. And then the next day, she wouldn't talk about it. And the day after that, she wouldn't talk about it. So this is where I do it. I knew that Renee had a diary. And when she was out the next day, I went and I found that diary and I read the most recent entries. And this name, Buddy, kept on coming up all over the place. And obviously, Buddy was somebody in New Jersey who was very special to her. Okay, now, did I tell her that I read her diary? Now, I might be stupid, but I'm not a fool. So no, I didn't tell her that I read her diary. I said something like, Renee, you have to tell me what's wrong. You owe me that much. Played on her guilt feelings. And so she told me, and she told me about Buddy. Buddy was her high school sweetheart, and they re-met at their reunion, and they kind of hit it off. And she told me further that in a week, she was flying back to New Jersey with all her stuff to move in with Buddy. Now, I was heartbroken, obviously. And I cried, and Renee cried, and we cried a lot together, too, for those next few days. But in a week, she was gone, and I was alone. I drank a lot. I smoked a lot. Our friends consoled me. They did their best. Didn't work. And every day went by like an eternity, kind of like today with coronavirus. And then about a week later, I got a phone call early in the morning in San Francisco anyway. It was later on in New Jersey because it was Renee. And it was kind of awkward. I didn't know why she was calling me and what to say. So I said, "How are you?" And Renee said, "I'll be okay on Wednesday, I think." And I said, "Why? Why will you be okay on Wednesday?" And she said, "Because I'm coming home if you'll have me." I said, yes. All of my visions of what was going to happen in my life, which had been completely trashed, came back to me in an instant. I was going to have a future, a wife, kids, all the stuff that I had been dreaming about, all the stuff that I had been romantically thinking about when Renee was back in New Jersey were going to happen. So she came back. Later on that year, about 3 or 4 months later, we were married. So maybe reading her diary wasn't the most stupid thing in the world. And in fact, 42 years later, 2 grown children, 2 wonderful grandchildren, I gotta say, I think it was pure genius, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick, for that great story. And now for our final storyteller of the night, please welcome Thea Daniels.
Hi, everybody. I was sound asleep, dreaming of barbecues. I could smell the burgers and the smoke, and then bang, bang, bang. Did that really happen, or was that in my dream? A moment later, bang, 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 louder. Thea, wake up. Santa Rosa's on fire. And I stumbled out of bed and opened the door. It was my children's father. He had come to take my children and I to safety, along with his fiancée, 2 dogs and a tortoise. With urgency, we packed up the backpacks, shoved clothes into bags, grabbed paperwork, important documents, the all-important pictures and special things that I knew I couldn't live without. And I had a moment of clarity that I wasn't supposed to be going with them. I told my boys, I'm not going with you guys because it feels like I'm going to be running away. Mom, you can't stay. You've got to go with us, they pleaded. And I struggled at the crossroads of what it is that I should do as a mom and what my gut was telling me. And I felt my heart ripping out of my chest as they drove away. My home is in the center of Santa Rosa, the safest place that I could be. And my children were being taken to safety with their family. So now what? Now what do I do? I called the police and said, I live in downtown Santa Rosa. I want to help. Where do you need me? And they said, go on down to the Veterans Building. Cool. That's just a few blocks away and I can walk there. So I started walking all by myself. The choke of the smoke in my lungs was awful. There was that eerie red-orange glow, and it was a warm October night. And the wind was going so fast, it blew my hair in my face. It was a little bit longer then. And that's when it happened. That wow moment. You know that moment that you hear other people talk about when something happened and it completely changed their life forever? That was happening to me. I felt this freedom out of nowhere, this calm sense that I knew I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, even though I didn't have any idea what I was doing. It was a really cool feeling. And it was really unexpected. And it's still a really cool feeling. It sends tingles every time I think about it up my spine. Yeah, that was something. But then I walked into chaos. People were dropping off people, carloads of people, busloads of people were being dropped off so they wouldn't die. People were running around looking for people. People were looking for information. People were looking for something to do, to be helpful. And that's when ding, 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 the alarm went off in my head. I could be helpful. My phone worked. I was getting information, what little there was on that evening. And I'm tall and I'm loud. But we wound up gathering up and found a microphone and a sound system and created Ground Zero in the center of the storm at the Veterans Hall before the first responders showed up. And Sonoma County Strong rose from the ashes. I've hung on to that wow moment, and I've done things that I've only dreamed of, like tonight. This is huge. And you know what? I'm just beginning, and it's really exciting. I've learned to listen to that voice inside. I'm not a genius, but the freedom that I experience, that's the perfect solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that story, Thea. It is kind of perfect. You're inspiring people now in this time of danger and unknown. So thank you for that inspiration. All right, you guys, that's our show. But wait, let me give you a couple of pieces of information. If you have a story that you would like to tell, a true story from your own life, you can submit it via our Facebook page at 6 Feet Apart Productions. And we're going to be doing these shows every week on Sunday nights. And I will be telling a story at the next Sunday show, which has the theme Great Escapes. My story has to do with a little bit of drugs. There's some kids in it. There's a robbery. There's a felony. You should tune in next Sunday night, 7:30, right here. Go to our Facebook page to find out all the information about the show, to submit a story of your own, and to find out links and stuff like that. And leave us comments. We totally want to hear your comments. And now let's bring all the storytellers back for a last goodbye and thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. It's the newest thing to do. Stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. The distance between me and you. 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. And when I say I'll keep you very close to my heart, it's purely metaphorical. These times are quite historical. So step aside, let's live our lives 6 feet apart.